Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Oh, well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking podcast. I'm your host, Greg Moore. You can find us at DMWpodcast.com. Find out more about the show. Heck, even check out our snarky merch. We got the Wine 'em, Dine 'em, Romans 9 'em shirt up there people really like. As well as we just dropped the Why Don't You Shut Up and Let That Be Your Wisdom, Job 13:5. The pagans seem to like that one when we tell them that Bible verse. But up top, we just got a few things I got to tell you about. Jacob Supply, guys. Absolutely love these guys. Sponsor the show. Right here in Temperance, Michigan. But we got guys coming from 10, 12, 14 hours away. This is what they do. They buy out wholesale. They have building products, appliances. Think like Lowe's or Home Depot, but 50% off all brand new items. I'm talking barn roofs, metal, decking, refrigerators, washer, dryers, all brand new, all up to 50% off. So if you got a project right now, make sure you see them. If you're a contractor or influencer or even a buyer at where you work, Jacob Supply is where to go, jacobsupply.com, or you can call them at 734-224-0978. They ship international or nationally too. So check them out. Jacob Supply, we love those guys. Two conferences I want to tell you about really quick as well. Sorry, guys, if you're watching this right now. I see these two brothers sitting here going, he didn't tell me there was live reads involved. We want to talk about a podcast. But thank God for Bitcoin and the workspace. Two conferences coming up. Thank God for Bitcoin. Jordan Bush. Love those guys. Met them years ago. They did a conference down in Miami. Now they're doing it in, where are they at? Rocketown, Nashville, July 24th and 25th. They're talking about the economy of money, how it glorifies God, how we invest. And you got some big hitters down there. Michael Foster, C.R. Wiley, Dr. Ben Merkel, Dr. Glenn Sunshine, Nate Fisher, Jordan Bush. They're going to be talking about all that stuff. And go check them out. All this stuff is in the link in our description, too. So if you're listening or watching, you can click through. But July 24th, 25th, thank God for Bitcoin. We definitely want to see you guys there. And then the Workspace, our man Kyle Hessler. Met him at a Fight Laugh Feast Network a few years ago. Was doing some stuff. Put together this conference. It's all going to be about the theology of work, mostly networking. So if you own a business, you're an influencer at a business, you got to get to this conference in Fort Worth, Texas on July 28th and 29th. They got guys like David Bonson there. I don't know. He just manages like $2 billion worth of assets. He might know something about business. C.R. Wiley, theologian from Theology Podcast, but has 80 doors that he owns, rentals. He knows a little bit about building things. Steve Jeffrey, David Reese, I don't know, Armor 500, the largest body armor manufacturer in the United States. He might know something. Andrew Krapichet's a Red Balloon. Yeah, he might know. So basically what I'm telling you guys, get down there. If you're a business owner, influencer, this is going to be the conference for you to network with those guys and to learn how to build a business, build for Christ, how to make those relationships that will help you provide for your family and make your business a success. And you can go to that link as well, too. All right, now that we got the business out of the way, we have two guys in studio. If you're watching, you see them, but you're going to hear their voices in a minute. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. We just got done finishing up one of their episodes for their podcast. They invited me on, and it was an absolute joy. My voice is going a little hoarse because they just put me to work on that thing, man. No, I'm just joking. We have Parker and Nick from the WHOLESALE podcast. Guys, how you doing?
Doing great,
Doing
man.
well.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
I tell everyone this as soon as I meet you. I'm jealous. I wanted to think of your idea for your podcast. I'm mad that I didn't because it's just such a great idea. You guys have a guest, watch a movie, then you discuss the movie. And it's not just like a generic movie review. I mean, we really got into the depths of like, what's the worldview of the character? What can we take away from this, as believers? Like, in this movie, do we see justice, evil? What are some characteristics of God and principles of the Bible? And it was just amazing. And I think it's such a great idea. But before we get into what you guys are doing on that podcast, can you each give me maybe a little short bio about yourself so the listeners can find out about you? We'll start with Parker.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Parker Brown. My wife's name is Kayla. We've got two boys, Ronan and Riker. We've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. That's pretty much all I do. That's my life.
Yeah.
We do jujitsu. That's all I got, man. We're pretty basic. We enjoy family time and talking about theology all the time. So,
yeah. And so I'm Nick. I'm actually Parker lives in Ohio. I'm from Indiana.
Okay.
You're from Indiana too. I'm gonna get off in 500 different ways. But so I married. My wife's name is Katie. 2 kids, 15 and 9. Or no, 15 and 6, not 9. What am I thinking?
Man,
I'm
she
trying
grew
to
up fast.
advance that a little bit. Yeah, just finished kindergarten. 15 and 6.
Man.
So big 9-year age gap, I think, is what I was getting at there. So I'm also on a pastoral team at a church in our community, and have been for 10 years now. But I work full time at a youth serving agency, completely separate from the church. So that's my bio, I guess.
Nice. So what made you guys think, well, first of all, how did you two connect? Because I had a co-host on this, Jason Hamlin, for a couple years, and it's so hard, even for two guys just busy, to get together to go, okay, we're going to commit to study and, prepare and watch, in your case, watch a movie. And how did you connect, and how did you guys both go, yeah, this is going to sound like a good idea to do a podcast together? I'm always interested in that relationship.
Nick's my cousin.
Yeah, so we actually didn't even get into that in the episode we recorded. Yeah, we're family. We're related. So there's that. But in terms of the origin of the idea of the podcast, so I was as a college student, I was just thinking about the conversations that I would have with my college buddies after we would go to a movie. And I was really thinking about the movie Inception. Like after that movie, the top spinning and it doesn't fall, right? The movie cuts before it falls. So it's subjective about what actually took place. Was it all a dream? And those conversations about starting at that point always, we were a bunch of Christian guys, always went into how does this relate to our faith? And I was thinking about those conversations, and that eventually became an idea for a blog that never got started.
Okay.
Never did anything with it. And then I became a youth pastor, and we did movie nights with the kids in our youth group, and we would ask questions after biblical questions. What about this character? And the things that you mentioned, we talked about on the episode that we recorded. We would do all of that with the youth kids, and they loved it. Like it helped them build and connect worldview and real life things to, like, movies aren't just entertainment, or isn't just entertainment, but there's something being said, and we can, anytime someone is saying something about what they believe, you can assess that based on your biblical worldview and see where they connect, see where they differ, and all those various things. But then Parker, I think it was probably at Ronan's first birthday party, I think. Probably around that time, was talking about starting podcasts, and he was talking about getting things going, and he's like, we should start a podcast together. And we had no idea what the topic would be, what would we do. And then I sent him a write-up of the movie Fences that I did when I thought I was going to do a blog. And then so he said that should be our podcast.
There you go.
So there we go.
I think so. The first 2 or 3 episodes, we just went off of those blog posts.
Yeah,
never got posted.
I think it was only the first one.
Was it the first one?
Yeah.
I thought there were more
Fences
than one.
Was our first episode. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, like I said, you guys take the movie and we really broke it down, and you guys both, even on the episode that I was just on, and we reviewed Tombstone, which I think there's a lot there to review. I don't see anyone else doing that, and I told you guys that both. Like if I go out into the podcast search bar and I'm looking, I can find people who review movies and are cinephiles and they're non-believers, or even believers that are just like giving you a movie review, like, oh, this is safe to watch for you and your family.
Yeah.
That's not what you guys are doing. It's not just necessary. You give a synopsis and a little review. And I know in my episode, we touched on, cinematography a little bit and writing and depth of character, but also getting into like almost the theology of it was really exciting for me. Like, what do we see in this character that reflects A, B, or C? Or, you know what I mean? Was that always from the onset? That's kind of how we were going to do it and try to get really deep into it?
Absolutely.
Or was there some discussion there? Like, no, we
wanted to keep the apologetic nature of the podcast or of the blog posts kind of central to the podcast idea.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to equip listeners or movie watchers with a way to actually practically not just kind of hook up to the IV drip of just entertainment for entertainment's sake. We wanted to kind of just invite people into what we do when we watch movies.
Yeah. And so when I saw what you guys were doing, I also, because that's what I've been doing with my family. My oldest is 14. Since they've been watching movies, we may watch something that has, look, and we're not getting into like, ultra violent or sexually grotesque, but some things that some people would probably deem content wise is too. My kids are too young for that movie. But we would sit them down, watch them with it, and then have a discussion afterwards. Like, okay, the main character, were they godly, not godly? Where did they get their motivation from? What should they have done different? What did they do right?
Yep.
Right? And really and do that with music as well, too. Like, when kids were young and they're singing Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm saying, well, this is a man that's struggling against his sin and depravity. And then, like, what does that song actually mean? So I've always been big on, like, let's explain and let's really dive into what this entertainment is that we're watching or listening to or creating. And you guys are doing that with movies. And I fear like, I don't know what you guys think. I feel like most believers really don't do that too much. I mean, there's a sect of like Reformed believers I know that are really into it. I know Doug Wilson's big on preaching that and doing it. Right. But I just don't find many people outside of that go, yeah, let's actually sit down and dissect the art that we just took part in and then divide that by the word of God and what was good and right about that and what wasn't and why do you think that character acted that way? And I think you can get a lot out of that, even if you're not doing it for kids, just between friends. And that's what you guys are doing on the podcast. So it's like, I think you're filling a void that, you know what I mean? That
I appreciate that.
That we just don't even have within the Christian community in general that we should be doing. You guys created a podcast out of it, which I think is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we want to, I guess my big thing is bringing back critical thinking. And I know that sounds maybe kind of lame to say or harsh or whatever, but when you watch something, it's so easy to just adopt what the movie's telling you or what the story is telling you. Yeah. It's so easy to just watch something and then just take it at face value and go about your day and not really think. But if you really want to litmus test for where the world is in terms of worldview or whatever, look at art, look at the entertainment industry, and either one, understand where it's at, or two, use it to combat itself.
Yeah.
Because our big thing on the podcast is you have to know Christ to understand story. Yeah. Because without Christ, there's no reason for relating to anything in the story itself.
Yeah, there's no beauty, there's no justice,
nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
that's a good point.
Yeah, and an example of that is we did a review of the movie Inception. It's probably one of our lowest quality episodes in terms of, I think we had some malfunctioning equipment or something. But in that movie, if you watch Inception, and I know I already mentioned it once, the climax of the movie comes when Dom, the main character, is confronted with his, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, this might not make sense, but
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. And even if it is a spoiler, you're not going to know what it means. So
10 years old. If it's a spoiler by now, you should have seen it already.
He's confronted with his mental projection of his wife, right? And what he thinks of his wife is trying to convince him to stay, right? Stay in this, dream state so that we can be together and we can be together forever because you miss me, you're grieving over her death and all of that stuff. But there comes a point where he has to choose between going on with his mission and bringing resolution there or his own mental projection of his wife. And his grief over his wife. But the choice that he makes isn't necessarily that one. He says something like, she says, "Don't you love me? Stay with me. Stay here with me." And then he says, "You're the best I could do. You're just a projection, and you're not good enough. You can't represent my wife in all of her beauty, all of her complexity, all of what she really was. You're just a projection. You're the best I could do, but you're not good enough." So what if we take that? How does that relate to the way that our mind crafts idols?
Sure.
Like these imposter gods that we craft to our own liking. They're just these projections in our mind of what is good, what is pure, what is holy. But when you compare them to the real thing, they don't measure up. Yeah. And we have to shed those imposters, deny those imposters to actually get to the real, real thing.
No, it's good.
So just things like that, like asking, why do we relate to this? Why does this actually connect with us on an emotional level or, on an intellectual, whatever it might be? Why do we relate to this? What is it about the human condition that inevitably, at the end of Endgame, when all that happens with Tony Stark, we're going to have tears in our eyes? Why? Yeah. Why do we respond to story that way? And what is it about this character that made us made us respond that way. So those are the kinds of questions that
Right.
that we're trying to bring out rather than just taking it and saying, oh, that was a fun movie.
And there isn't any question or any emotional response to a movie that you can have that doesn't end in because God, because of creation, because right?
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
That's pretty cool. So shifting gears here a little bit, I just this just popped in my head, but what is your favorite movie each of you? You can have a different answer, but for each of you that you've reviewed so far, which one was the most enjoyable? And not just because of the, it's not like, oh, I like that guest, or I like the actual movie that you got to talk about, and you were like, yeah, that was my favorite one to dissect.
I really enjoyed Dead Poet Society.
Okay.
So that's a Robin Williams movie. That was a really good episode. We did have a guest on that one that picked that movie, so I enjoyed that one. And I'll throw out another one, the movie Free Guy. It's not very well known. It's a Ryan Reynolds movie. It came out at the height of COVID. So, like, it was a streaming-only release. It never made it into theaters.
But that's Free Guy?
Free Guy, yeah.
What's that about?
It's about...
it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's about a character in a video game, in an open-world video game, who gains consciousness.
Okay.
So it's all about him experiencing freedom that he never had before.
Right. Yeah, so it's like an NPC, non-person character.
Yeah.
And he becomes sentient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He becomes aware. So it's really fun. I think
How about you?
mine would have to be A Quiet Place. I can't remember. I think it was maybe Quiet Place Part 2. It was those two movies that we did. I think were pretty good.
I don't think I've seen that. Is that the one there where they can't talk or something?
Yeah,
Or
can't make any noise.
They can't make any noise.
noise.
Yeah. That one, because remember when he's in the boat and he jumps off and he gets back on the boat, and then the key to that movie was the daughter's hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he opens his mouth, and it's like the hope. He saved the hope,
right.
and the hope comes out of his mouth.
Yeah.
No differently than a Christian. Hope comes out of our mouth when we preach the gospel, share the gospel. It's so like there's a lot of parallels that you can make in every single movie that relate back to our faith. And one of my favorite, I think we talk about this often, one of my favorite aspects of the podcast is that you can be anywhere in your Christian faith and participate.
Right.
You don't have to have a level of maturity. You don't have to have Romans memorized. You can enjoy this at any position in your faith, and you can still do the exercise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I bet you guys are just a riot watching movies with like non-believers. They're just like, you're like watching Avengers. See that? It's a Christ figure right there. You go, Shadow of Christ. Yeah. You know why you like that?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Can I just watch the movie?
I didn't come for a sermon. Come on.
No, that's good though. No, it's a unique way to do that. And we were talking offline before how I've just been really upset that the Western Christian church has just kind of given up art to the pagans for the last 75 years, 100 years. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, you guys can just have that. You get music, you get movies, you get paintings, you get sculpture. It's like 100 plus years ago, it was only the Christians that were creating all the beautiful things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was like, what happened? Why? That stuff belongs to us
now
to glorify God.
We convert old warehouses now. That's what Christians do now.
Old ware. Are you talking about
like Walmart,
like for churches?
For churches,
movie theaters,
yeah.
Okay, now you just brought something up here that's been a sticking point for me. Let me. This is what the podcast is all about. You guys tell me what you think of this. I don't like that at all. I think they're just, and I'm not saying you should be concerned with how much it costs or the way it looks, but I think it needs to be beautiful. The house of God used to be an aesthetic where you would go, that is different, that is honoring to him. I mean, yes, it's Old Testament, but he gave very specific instructions on what that temple looks like. And the churches in America are just so ugly. Mm-hmm. We're just like, oh, it's a big warehouse. Yeah. And look, I go to a church that we make fun of. It looks like a big, we built it. It's not in a strip mall. It's a big box warehouse, 2 levels, concrete floors. And we're like, right. But at the same time, there's something gorgeous about, and maybe because churches have just gotten too big, but, 150 seat cathedral, 200 seat cathedral, woodworking, iron, stained glass. I don't know. Something draws me. They're like, I can be in there and go, okay, the natural beauty of this building using natural wood and glass and stone reminds me of creation and of Christ and of God. I don't know. Are you guys picky on that at all, or do you think? I don't know, should we get back to that maybe a little bit more? I know a couple pastors that are actually doing that, where they're like, no, we're going to save our money. And when we get to this extreme amount of money, because everything's so expensive now to build, we're going to build a smaller church, but it's going to be visually pleasing and on, you know what I mean? It's not just going to be the old Kmart is here, Walmart is in storage place is now a church, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything to that? Am I being too legalistic? Am I legalistic upbringing?
No, I don't think. I think when you get into beauty, and by no means am I an expert. And I'm kind of thinking of this off the top of my head, but I do agree that beauty reflects God. And if God is eternal, then there is a objective standard of beauty. So I think in our moral relativistic world, everything is subjective, even art, even beauty, and even grotesque things are considered beautiful. Sure. And I think we need to get back to a standard of reflecting God in our art. So because if we do that, then it will inherently be beautiful.
What does that look like, though? So what is the godly standard of beauty in art?
Well, I think
that is the question.
That is the question. I guess I have
answer it for us.
I'll do my best here. But
6,000 years we've been wondering.
Our God is a God of order. He's a God of logic. He's a God of anti-chaos. Yeah. So I think that there's symmetry. I mean, like the rule of thirds when you're talking about production and
the golden circle or whatever they say.
Right. So I think if it reflects God and reflects the natures of God in terms of those things that I've mentioned, I think that we're on the path to a standard where you're not like Picasso in his later works had noses coming off of people's faces, and it was just more grotesque, and his earlier works was more symmetrical and like demonstrating God through his creation and symmetry and reflecting those types of characteristics of God. I think that at least scratches the surface of where we should go back to.
Okay, so let me throw this out at you, and
maybe that's crazy. I don't know.
But. No, you're right, because God is a God of order and symmetry and all those things, but at the same time, because I talked, who was it? I don't want to say his name if I don't remember correctly, but there was someone that was on the podcast, and we were talking about music. And just for my background, and the listeners already know, so I won't go too long into it, but it was my upbringing up until like 12 years old was non-denominational church, spirit-filled, but very legalistic. We were in that 80s, 90s kind of Bill Gothard, like that kind of stuff. So it was like, I'm a piano player and a drummer, and I was told, your piano teacher's teaching you Keith Green. That's like Satan's music. That's like contemporary Christian. And I don't know if you ever listen to Keith Green, it's like Billy Joel light. You know what I mean? It's not. And I was playing You Put This Love in My Heart. So had a really stigma of like what music, and there's evil drum beats and this and that. And I was just talking to someone and he said, well, beauty is orderly. And I said, yeah, but boy, do I love jazz. And the whole reason I love jazz is because there's a tension there. And then somehow it gets resolved in that next space. And as a piano player and a drummer, I can really appreciate it kind of fitting together, even though it's chaotic. And he was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, so by that standard, if we say it has to be orderly and non-chaotic, and, then that can't be beautiful, but I truly do appreciate it. I'm not sitting there like, man, I need to go get some heroin and get high with these guys. It's like my appreciation, most of the jazz I listen to has no words.
Right. But is there still a time?
Well, I mean...
Is there still a tempo? So I think that not all of it is what I'm not saying is that there's no subjectiveness to it. Right. I'm just saying that it has to, I would think that it would start with reflecting the natures of God. And inside of that, there can be chaos. Does that make sense?
So even jazz gets resolved back on a tempo. And that's where the relief comes, and we go, oh, look how they pulled that together. And so there's still an order to it.
So God's creation is orderly. He's got an order. But then if you look at hurricanes and natural disasters, those are not orderly at all.
Right. The experience of them is not.
Yeah. So I still think that you can have both.
For humans, I mean, a hurricane does a lot of good for the environment in certain ways if there were no humans here. Sure. That's the really crazy thing, how it balances the ecosystem and things like that. It's pretty crazy. It's not, I don't know. The older I get too, I feel like there's like almost two sides of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably true.
Just the fact that we just get so into that is this, and we put a label on it. There's an old Chinese proverb where the guy, I don't remember how it goes, but his son comes home, breaks his leg. His neighbor says, oh, it's a horrible thing. He goes, we'll see. You know, the Army comes by and goes, oh, because he has a broken leg, we're not going to conscript him into the Army. He goes, oh, what a great thing. He goes, well, we'll see. And it's like this chain of events of like, oh, it's a bad thing you broke your leg, but it's a good thing you did because you didn't have to be forced to draft into the Army. Oh, but it's a bad thing. You know, it's a good thing. So it's like, it's really perspective for me too. And I think that's why I like art so much too, because like you said, it's subjective, right? You got some people that just go, that is a horrible movie. And I go, I don't know. I really like that for, you know, for a couple of reasons. Have you guys had any movies where you just went, oh, why did we get this suggestion? Well, I don't want you to out anyone because you have guests on, but you don't have to say it if you don't want to, but has there been that experience of just like,
I'm glad you said that because I took
trying
that a
to get
little
through
differently. So like, I hope people that are listening, just to prep them, we are very rough on Christian films.
Yeah. So
it's
poor quality.
This is not a pod. Like if you're just in it for Christian films, like we've done Christian films. Have we?
Jesus Revolution,
Yeah, something like that. But
Nefarious is technically a Christian film.
Oh, yeah.
So don't come thinking that we're gonna like if it's bad, you'll know it.
Well, how many guests have you guys had on? You've had quite a few, right?
Yeah, we've had several.
I'm just saying. Yeah. Has there ever been because you allowed me to pick the movie, and I went, man, these guys are. Look at the set on them. Like I could come back with some crazy movie, and be like, or some horrible movie.
I'll tell you what, that list that you sent me was epic.
Oh, was it pretty
good?
Dude,
it was epic. I was like, man, which one do we pick? Which one do we let him pick?
Well, look,
they're all so good.
Yeah, but they're everyone thinks they're good. I'm not nothing special when it comes to movies. It's like I'm not a cinephile where I'm like, ooh, this pick from 1962, no. One off, and you're like, oh, how'd he find this? No, everyone loves.
They were good.
You know, Tombstone, Departed, and anything Leo's done, and you know, or whatever it was that I put on the list. But have you ever been halfway through a movie that you're watching going, oh, this is going to be tough why did I sign up for this podcast? I don't even want to watch this movie. Because sometimes I get halfway through a movie and I'm like, you have not done anything for me. I'm not giving you another hour of my life. I'll just turn it off. I've watched so many half movies.
That's hilarious.
I think for the most part, I don't think I've experienced that for the movies that we've done. I would say that if
you're a real artist. You appreciate all art.
Well, also
not like me.
He's the most critical.
When I'm so I didn't like Nefarious because of the ending of that movie. I thought it I was in it the whole time, and then the ending just kind of ruined it for me. But
your exact quote was, "I will never watch this movie."
I just won't watch it again because of how cheesy I thought the ending was. But if there was one like that, probably The Fabelmans, and that was a guest picked movie.
That's right.
That's a Spielberg movie.
I've never seen it.
It's newer.
Is it Fabelmans?
It's basically Steven Spielberg's. It's his biopic basically, but he changed the names from Spielberg to Fabelman. So that's it's basically his life story. That was probably, if there was one, that's it, because it's kind of a slow moving movie.
But he was the most prepared guest I've ever had.
He was definitely.
He came with 6 pages of notes.
6 pages of notes on the movie.
So you got to step your game up, man.
So I had 4 bullet points on my phone. Jeez.
I enjoyed that episode, doing that episode, but the movie itself probably wasn't one of my favorites. Yeah.
I can't think of any.
You didn't like Sing, the kids movie?
No. I enjoyed doing the movie for the podcast, but I had some issues with the movie and our breakdown of it, but you disagreed. And that's the other thing. Like, I love it. I love that there's different opinions. And
so you guys will disagree on it too.
Yeah,
go back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just like, let's just.
It's not like
talk the same stuff.
No, we
like
disagree all the time. In my notes today, I said Nick is, or what did I say?
Yeah, but you didn't say it on the
I didn't say it. I forgot to say it when I wrote it. He said, because, when you explained in the Tombstone episode that we just recorded, you explained your position, and it was more positive than the way it read.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I didn't say it.
Okay.
I was like, oh, that's actually reasonable.
His notes were, loved it, Nick was crazy.
Yeah.
That was his response. That's what he was prepared to say about my opinion of Tombstone.
No, I think, you guys definitely had different opinions on it when we were talking about it. I feel like you might like Tombstone a little bit more than he does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what if you had 3 movies that you could just keep watching over and over, never get tired of them? This is how I define favorite movie now, because I ask people, what's your favorite movie? And they go, oh, there's so many. And I go, what movie have you watched 15 times? And when they tell me, they go, oh, yeah, that's probably my favorite.
So you're talking to movie guys. So what category are we hitting here?
category. I just
Action,
said
adventure, romance, drama. What are we doing? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Maybe 3 off the top of your head where you go, these are solid movies. I could put them on, stream them, DVD them, whatever you do, anytime, and I'd be okay with watching the whole thing.
So I would say 13 Hours, Secret Soldiers of Benghazi has to be up there for me.
Okay.
I love that movie.
Okay. Why so?
I think...
Were you in the military?
I was not. No,
Okay.
I'm infatuated with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
You know, it hits me in a different place, and I think that they did a very, very good job. I'm blanking on the director. Was it?
It was Michael Bay.
Michael Bay. That's right.
Okay.
I think he just did a phenomenal job.
You like explosions then?
Oh, I like that stuff. Love it. I think John Krasinski did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love that movie. I could watch it on a loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're doing 1? You're not doing 3?
I'll have to think. You go. We'll do back and forth.
We'll go back and forth.
Okay, yeah.
The easiest one, The Dark Knight.
That was
I absolutely.
pivotal.
I have watched it probably at least once a year, probably multiple times a year since it came out. So it's my absolute favorite movie.
What's crazy is it's a superhero movie, but it's such a great drama.
Yeah.
Too. It's like, wow, Christopher Nolan really knew what he was.
Yeah.
Because that's the first one, right?
Yeah. No, that's the second.
Second one. Yeah.
Batman Begins and then
That's
The Dark
right.
Knight.
Yeah. Not Begins. Yeah. Yeah. That's good too. All right. So what do you got? You got a second one?
Man, this is so hard. I've seen so many movies. I would say, I'm trying to think of another movie that's not another war movie.
Well, I'll tell you what. Really,
Because Saving Private Ryan comes to mind. I could watch that all the time.
you know which one I really liked was came out a few years. Oh, now probably 5 years ago. 1817, I think it is.
1917.
I haven't seen that yet. I
It's
haven't
so
seen it yet.
good.
Holy cow! Isn't that shot beautifully?
Talk about
Just
a
like,
journey,
Yeah.
an adventure.
And
it's
just like
so good.
you're just in their world, like, oh, this is what it was like.
And
Huh? This is crazy.
I think
What,
half the
1817?
movie,
Yeah,
half the movie
1917.
or something, or the first so many minutes of the movie was no cuts. Like they just filmed it.
It was
incredible.
42-minute single shot.
Yeah, I heard about it. I think it won. Like, didn't it win awards for cinematography?
I think
or
it did,
something?
yeah.
Probably.
So good. And the
But-
actors did a great job.
But and I'm not giving this a full endorsement because it is rough and there's some language in it because it's very real. But I think HBO had a series called Generation War. Have you ever?
No, not seen it. Good.
Dude, well, I'm just saying, all listeners beware. Don't watch this with your kids. If you're offended by like swearing, it's very realistic. It follows the guys around in the Iraq War, and it's a group of guys in a Humvee, and it's like every joke, every fear, characteristic. And you talk, and what it is if you talk to other guys that were there, they go, "This is the most accurate representation of how it is to be in a." I'm going to use the wrong word. Platoon. What's the smaller one? Not battalion, platoon. That maybe 10 or 20 guy. Dude, it's Generation War. It's basically 8 episodes at 2 hours apiece. So it's, what do they call that? Like a mini
series.
Like a mini series. Yeah.
I think,
But if you like that, that first movie and Saving Private Ryan, you would like that series.
I like Forrest Gump a lot.
That's good.
I mean, just main classics. Or I just like stories, man. I could just put something on and watch it.
Yeah. It's crazy
It's
how
so good.
Forrest Gump is kind of before my. Some of it's before my time. Some of it's during my childhood. 80s and 90s. But the whole thing seems very Americana. Like every part of that movie is just like you're like, oh yeah, I reckon. Like they really hit the.
It's just nostalgic.
Yeah, nostalgic. There you go.
Yeah, it's nostalgic. Even if you didn't grow up in that time, you know, it's just wholesome.
Yeah.
So Nick is just biding his time for a second movie. He's
Yeah,
hard
number-
looking.
number
He's
two.
like, "Are you
Yeah,
done
go ahead.
talking, Parker?"
I know.
Since you're not thinking of number 2, I've got 10 more.
You just outlined our podcast. Like, are you done talking, Parker? It just sits there and waits until I'm done.
There's a movie called Prisoners.
Okay.
I don't know how to say the director's name. Denis Villeneuve, the same guy that directs Dune, the Dune movies.
Okay.
Starring Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Nick's a little bit of a nerd, I think.
I
You
am.
got a little nerd
I
going
am.
on here. I like
but
that.
that's a
I'm,
good movie.
I'm a Trekkie. Let's go.
When it comes to movies, I'm very much a nerd. Yeah,
That's
I
a
love
good
that
movie.
movie. So that's number 2 for me.
I haven't seen your first one or your second one. I'm really slacking here. You guys are deep cuts.
And it's another one of those. I wouldn't give it my full endorsement for everyone to watch because it's also rated R. Got a lot of language in it, very violent.
We actually didn't say that for our Tombstone episode, but we always say that any movie we review is never like an endorsement. You got to follow your own conscience and do that whole thing. So
That's a good point too. And it's really tough too, because there's some movies out there that I would love to sit down with my kids and watch. And you go, I could just remove, well, I guess you got VidAngel and stuff like that. But you go, if you could just remove, like, I don't know, 4 to 6 minutes of this movie, it would, and sometimes doesn't even help the story. It's an agenda driven. Right. Let's interject this because we have this social view or whatever it is. And it's just tough with kids. Now with me, I think I can, if it's not gratuitously, what's the word I'm looking for? Grotesque in certain areas just to be that, I'm not going to watch that movie. But if you need, if you need bloodshed or arguing or tempers flaring and saying certain things to advance the story, well, I'm sorry, but that's just life. I've never been a parent that goes, oh, shelter your kid from every single thing. Because I was that kid. And then, and then you get out in the real world and you go, oh, what?
Yeah.
Right.
People cuss. Yeah. People have opinions about not being a Christian, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you go, so that's not good either.
Do you ever watch like kids or movies that you liked when you were a kid, and you forget negative things that are in it, and then you sit down and you watch it with your kids, and then that pops up, and you're like, oh no, I had no idea. Yeah.
It's crazy because most of the movies I watched, it was sneaking over to friends' houses and watching, because we were like 1 hour of public television a week. All the 80s and early 90s movies that everyone references my age, I've never seen them. They're like, well, you never seen Goonies? You never seen? Nope, never. Wasn't allowed to watch any of that. So had to do a lot of catching up in my kind of later teens and high school years. But all the time, I sit down and I go, how did I not remember, that was in there? Right. And then I go, well, maybe I'm just a dumb kid. Wasn't picking anything up. You know what I mean? Like these horrible scenes in this movie, you just don't remember. And I go, well, maybe it's not quite as bad as we think as adults when a kid is watching it and going, oh, they're just going to dwell on this. No, it's going in one ear and out the other half the time. Right. They're using it as entertainment. Not that I'm saying you make an excuse to, hey, let's just watch filth because they won't remember it. But yeah, what is that? Why do we not remember? Yeah.
I just think we just don't know.
Is that what it is?
I think it's just you don't
connect it?
We don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then when we grow up, we do. I think it's as simple as that.
It could be, but so. I know there are movies where I've had that experience where I knew like what bad words were.
Yeah, me too.
And I still don't remember them being there.
That many.
Yeah.
And you go, whoa, geez, they're really dropping these cuss words every 2 seconds. I watched this when I was 7 at a buddy's house. Don't even remember, or whatever.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy. All right, so we got favorite movies. Any bad movie? Well, you guys didn't give me 3, but you gave me 2. You gave me 1. You got off. You said Forrest Gump for number 2.
I think I said Forrest Gump.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
I think you threw out some bonus too. You said Saving Private Ryan. You were like, I'm not gonna say Saving Private Ryan.
I know, and then I did.
You said,
okay, I'll give you another one. So
I'm not gonna say, but I'm gonna use it.
Yeah. I think
that's my second one.
I think it's called Brothers with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire.
Okay. Oh, I've seen the
it's really good
trailer on that, but I've never watched that either.
It's really good. It's about a guy that comes back, and it's also maybe not the most wholesome movie. I don't remember any. I don't remember any like super terrible
disclaimer, guys. Disclaimer. None of us can remember anything in a movie. Don't take our word for it.
But the reason why I like that is because it really does a good job demonstrating the weight of loss.
Yeah.
In that movie, in terms of like a marital relationship. When you're not equally yoked, or someone thinks that infidelity has happened and it hasn't, or maybe has to a certain degree. Yeah. So it's just the anger and the emotion that comes. They just did a phenomenal job showing that.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen an older movie, River Runs Through It, with?
I've seen it. It's been so long. I don't remember. We don't remember.
That's actually a decent drama. It's not very fast paced, and there's not a whole lot of action, but just what a great story of like generational brothers kind of against each other. And I don't know why that popped into my head. You said something earlier.
I said brothers, yeah.
Yeah, you said brothers. That's probably why. But that's another good one too. So welcome to the Review Every Movie Ever podcast, guys. I guess that's what we're doing
Where we
now.
Forget them all.
Yeah.
Where we forget them all. All right, so tell me what you got coming up on the podcast. Where can people find it? What you got coming up this year? You guys are releasing twice a week now?
Yeah.
Or twice a month now? Excuse, twice a week. Jeez.
I know, I said that earlier. We try to do the first and third.
Movies every day.
Yeah. We try to do the first and third Friday of every month. Yeah. And then we've got a few other types of videos that are coming out on YouTube. But to answer your question, where people can find us, anywhere that you can listen to like RSS feeds, so like Spotify.
Sure.
They don't have Google anymore, right?
Yeah, Google Podcast doesn't exist
anymore. I don't think it exists, yeah.
So we're pretty much everywhere you can find, like the main places you can find podcasts. And then we've got YouTube.
Yeah.
The YouTube channel.
It's all just branded Watch Well.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
The Watch Well podcast.
The Watch Well. Where'd the name come from? Like
Just
you watch
it well. So don't just watch it sitting back doing nothing, but do it well.
Actively
doing
watch
something
it,
at
be
will.
engaged, like discuss. I like it. Yeah.
Watch it well.
All right, cool. Anything else you guys got before we finish up here?
No,
that's
Man.
it. Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's so cool when guys come by, and it was funny when you contacted me and you're like, wait a minute, where are you? And I go, here. You go, you're about 30. Wait a minute, my other guy's a little, what are you, about 2 hours away?
Yeah,
probably?
about 2.5. Yeah.
And I was like, come on up. We'll do a double episode. So, guys, make sure you go check out the Watch Well podcast. Everything's going to be linked up below in the description. Put them on your rotation. Put them on auto download. You're going to enjoy it. Twice a month, you're going to get a movie. They're going to be discussing it. They're going to be talking about how it affects them, how it relates to the Bible. I mean, I'm so mad that I didn't have this idea. I really am. But it's a righteous anger.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
It's
I
a
really,
righteous, godly anger and jealousy.
I'm really bad at this too, but we also have a Patreon page if people want to support Christian podcasts or anything like
Do
that. I never really ask.
Yeah,
I always forget because I don't like asking for money, but it does pay the bills and it helps. So.
I don't mind asking for money for brothers in the Lord that are doing something good. So, guys, if you go check them out, Watch Well, you can pause it right now. Go subscribe. Go find the link to their Patreon and listen. Instead of giving $5 or $7 or $10 twice a month to a pagan company like Starbucks and getting some nasty coffee that is over roasted and it has fake sugar flavoring in it, take that $10, give it to these guys, and they can support the ministry and keep doing God's work. How about that? Is that good? Is that a deal, you guys?
Yeah,
Those listening and watching? All right, cool. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, you can find out more about us, DMWpodcast.com. We're everywhere on socials at the Dead Men Walking Podcast, except for Twitter didn't give it to us, so you got to go real DMW Podcast. But it's all linked up below. Remember, chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless.
Amen.
Be sure to check us out at DMWpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the Pub TV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuit.